welcome to Viewpoint from Overseas. I am your host, Misbah Azam, with me, Riaz Haq, our regular panelist, and Ali Hassan Samantor from Skype. Today we are talking about the recent visit by the Secretary of Defense James Mattis to India, Afghanistan, and then later on Qatar. And I will ask my panelists how they see that visit and how it will play in the coming days in the political dynamics of the area. We will also talk about Shyam Saran, who was the former Foreign Secretary in India. He just published a book, How India Sees the World. There he talks about Pakistan, and I still did not read the book, but of course there are some news coming out. I will ask Riazap and Samantur if they have read the book and they found something interesting out of it. Trump's shenanigans. Of course, this is one of the very famous Twitter handle. However, we will talk about all the President Trump's recent tweeters about Puerto Rico. Just today, when the mayor of San Juan, Miss Carmen Cruz, she kind of complained that she needs more help and things like that, and she kind of said that I beg that please help something. So President Trump went back and he started blaming her for being played by the Democratic Party, and he said that why she has no issue before with me, but now why she has it. So we will talk about it. Then in the end, for a very short time, we would talk about the tourism in Pakistan. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, tourism in Pakistan, not terrorism in Pakistan. Bloomberg report quoted one very prestigious forum about that how the tourism grew in Pakistan from 2013 to 2016. According to those numbers, Pakistan has the domestic tourism increased from almost 35%. It's 35.6% or something like that, if I remember correctly. While the international tourism, people coming from outside, the foreigners going to Pakistan, grow almost 3 times. So I will ask my panelists how they see it and how they see the future of tourism, because as we know that the tourism is some kind of stepchild of every government. We see it, and there is hardly any kind of emphasis put on that thing, and the money is very, very little for that, So let's start with the Foreign Secretary Shyam Saran's book, How India Sees the World. Riaza, how India sees the world.
Yeah, so the topic is, the title is very interesting. The title says, How India Sees the World, Kautilya to the 21st Century. So this reference to Kautilya is very interesting. For those who don't know about Kautilya was a person like Machiavelli. Some people call him Indian Machiavelli.
Indian Machiavelli.
Yeah, he was very, talked about statecraft, about strategy. Mm-hmm. And actually the word Kautilya means crooked.
Well, Machiavellian is also some kind of...
Yeah, but I think the word itself. So this was a pen name, this was not his real name. It's believed that his real name was Chanakya, he used to serve in the court of Chandramaurya Gupta.
Achha.
Yeah. So he was actually like a Machiavelli type figure, except that a German historian by the name of Max Weber says that he was actually a very radical Machiavelli. In fact, if you read him, he makes Machiavelli look like a harmless child, a kind of a harmless person. So he was much more wicked compared to Machiavelli. So that's something interesting. Now, one of the things Kautilya used to say, one of his quotes is that your neighbor is your natural enemy, and your neighbor's neighbor is your friend. So that, I think, you see reflected today in India's foreign policy. You know, India believes Pakistan is an enemy and Afghanistan is a friend. Similarly, India sees China as an enemy and Japan as a friend. So this is just the background.
Sri Lanka, Nepal.
Yeah, those are much smaller nations. They don't pose a threat. So, and they go after them too. By the way, the policy toward Nepal has been pretty, awful. They have actually, they in fact embargoed in Nepal for a while. Nepal was in big trouble.
Recently, yes, last year.
And then prior to that, they actually armed and funded the Tamil rebels in Sri Lanka, the LTTE. So anyway, in the book, he actually talks about one particular thing that struck me about the book was that he talks about the two disputes between India and Pakistan about Siachin and Sir Creek. These are believed to be low-hanging fruit that can be easily resolved. And he said, we had an agreement, we were going to resolve these two issues. We had reached a consensus among ourselves and with Pakistan. And at the last moment, there were two people who came in and they basically torpedoed the deal. One was the National Security Advisor Narayanan, who worked for Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. And then the other person was General J.J. Singh. And he was surprised to see how vehement they were about this deal. You know, in fact, J.J. Singh had earlier agreed to the deal, but then when he showed up for the meeting, the last meeting prior to the discussion with Pakistan, to the meeting with Pakistan to sign the deal, J.J. Singh actually turned against the deal as well. So this gives you some inkling as to how things have been working. There are, some hawks in Indian diplomacy who actually are opposed to making even the smallest of compromises with Pakistan on any issue.
Samantor, how you see that?
Yeah, so Misbah, I have not read Shyam Saran's book, but looking at the topic of the book and what he says, definitely would be a very interesting read. I just have problems when these very old books, for example, is Chanakya or Machiavellian, the Prince, and those books are brought in today's discussion. Those books were written for a completely different audience, and it was a time when there were chieftains and there were Nawabs and there were Rajas, and the whole thing was about how to gain power. In fact, that's what the Machiavelli's book Prince was about, how to gain power in all this, this kind of setup. And those books are not really relevant in today's politics, because today's politics is about democracy, it's about common people. So it does not really make sense to bring those very old books into a discussion today. But definitely whatever happened in the past about how these opportunities of peace between India and Pakistan were lost, we should look forward and see how we can make this happen now with whatever reality we have. And that is what I think is the need of the hour. Yes, be cognizant of the past and what happened before, and then this deal was about to happen, did not happen, but that's all gone. Now we look forward and see what can be done now.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I also did not read that book so far, so I cannot do too many comments on this book. So let's move on and let's talk about General Mattis' visit, the U.S. Defense Secretary, to India, then Afghanistan, and then Qatar. He gave some very interesting statements there, and in Qatar, one of his statements, he talked about some new rules that everybody should be played by the rules and things like that. And I'm a little bit surprised, Riaz, what rules American will talk about. I mean, it is just, I'm very surprised about it. that when I talk about rule, do I follow that rule? For me, in Syria, rule is different. I am going to support to the outsider, non-state actors. Yeah, but that rule applies only for the places where it helps me. How you see that? And just please give a comment on his visit of India. And as you see it, that when he was talking with his counterpart, Indian counterpart, he was kind of indirectly giving message to Pakistan about it. So how you see all that?
Yeah, so there were a number of topics that he covered during his visit to India. One topic, of course, was a follow-up to President Trump's Afghan strategy. This is the first visit by a U.S. cabinet member to India since that announcement by Trump where he sought India's help in Afghanistan. The other topic for his discussion was the F-16 deal. They want to start producing F-16s in India over the next several years. And the third topic of discussion was the U.S.-India military cooperation.
The drones,
particularly in the areas of logistics and some
technology.
technology and some weapons for the Indian military. So those are the key issues that they were talking about. But the thing that interested me was there's a person by the name of Bharat Karnad. He is a professor of national security studies at the Center for Policy Research in New Delhi. And there's something interesting he said. He acknowledged for the first time by any Indian think tank types that India is actually using the TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan.
Even he say that the secretary is going to tell India that to pull back from this policy.
Right. So one of the things he says is that Jim Mattis is expected to tell India to stop supporting the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan in Afghanistan to carry out acts of terror in Pakistan. But it's interesting that he also says that severing relations with TTP will mean India surrendering an active card in Pakistan.
That's true. He even said this thing, and I don't know, did they really talk about it or?
Yeah. Well, if they did, it's not going to come out. Nobody's going to acknowledge it. These are not the kinds of things. See, they're very willing to acknowledge and talk about what Pakistan is supposedly doing in Afghanistan, but they're not willing to talk about the role India is playing in using Afghanistan against Pakistan.
Don't you see it as a big embarrassment for India?
I don't know if it is, because this was never publicly acknowledged. This is a professor, a think tank guy, an analyst who's talking about it. You did not hear it from the official channels. So I think there is this hypocrisy in the United States where they only want to selectively acknowledge and talk about what Pakistan might be doing in Afghanistan, but not willing to acknowledge what India is doing to destabilize Afghanistan and Pakistan. So that's something that struck me about the visit and about the comments that I saw about the visit.
Even with the F-16 deals, Indian media is not happy because see, these planes will start manufacturing 10 years from now, then it would be almost 30-year-old technology.
Yeah, so that is the big key objection to it, that basically they believe, even hawkish analysts like Brahma Chalani are opposing it. They're saying that the U.S. is essentially offloading all the junk.
Just like they did with Pakistan.
On India, and they want to get some money out of it. That's what they're trying to do, make a business deal out of it. So there's a lot of opposition to it, because by the time they start manufacturing, this will be an outdated piece of equipment.
Even now they claim it is already 20-year-old technology.
It is 20-year-old, but what has happened is that they've been upgrading it, they've been adding things to it. But now, with the U.S. going to the fourth and the fifth generation technology, China going to that same technology, what good is India going to do?
Yes.
What is it going to do for India?
With F-16.
Yeah.
Samanto.
Yeah, so, as a pacifist, we have, the same problem, that these rich nations, they go and they sell their arms and ammunition to these poor countries and keep the hostilities between these countries, these third world countries, alive. And I think that we, people from the third world, need to see through this and not fall into this trap. And I think that, as I said before, that all the regional conflicts in South Asia should be resolved by the regional actors, by the regional states, sitting together on a table without the intervention of other parties who are just selling us arms and giving and putting us. Also, I have this problem. I mean, if this is happening between India and Pakistan, and whatever reason the U.S. has, between India and the U.S., whatever reason the U.S. has to increase this military collaboration between India and Pakistan, on the face of it, it looks like just a way for two countries who are stable and who are strong. They're coming closer together, doing all these military alliances. Even if that is happening, why should it bother people in Pakistan? And I think that this mindset of seeing everything as a zero-sum game, that anytime there's a gain for India, it must be a loss for Pakistan. I think that mindset needs to be changed. But at the end, what needs to be really done is to have better regional cooperation, and that is the only way to get peace in Afghanistan and also have peace between India and Pakistan.
Well, I would argue with you here, Samantor. It looks like duck, it quacks like duck, it walks like duck. No matter it is elephant, I'm going to call it duck. If you see India's military maneuvers, if you see the core doctrine, if you see any other, the ammunition they are buying, the tanks they are buying, they were all Pakistan specific, no matter what they say. Steve Cole, a famous author and historian, recently when he was talking to the foreign minister Khwaja Asif, he mentioned that when he goes to New Delhi says that, well, Pakistan, we sees it in the back viewer only. We don't care. They say that. They always say that. And Khwaja Asif very smartly responded. He said, well, if they see it in the back viewer, then it means they only see the back viewer. And I kind of agree with him. So how you comment? I will have a Riaz comment on that too.
Yeah, the thing is that as far as the Indian military and Indian, jingoistic attitude towards Pakistan, you must understand that if things like the 2008 Mumbai attack would not happen, then probably there would be a lesser chance of such, giving a boost to these jingoistic elements in India. So Pakistan has to shoulder this responsibility, and as Khwaja Asif rightly said when he was talking to people at the Asia Society.
How about Colonel Prohit?
One more time, please.
Colonel Prohit, his involvement in a bombing in Maligaon, in Samjhota Express. So India is doing the similar thing. So, saying that Mumbai attack is cause for every trouble between India and Pakistan. So what India is doing with Pakistan, and recently what Riaz just quoted Mr. Bharat Karnad, I cannot pronounce it. Okay, his article in recent Indian media, where he's saying that India is supporting TTP. So how we see that the whole scenario?
Yeah. So there's a difference between having something done in your country and sending people from your
Let me add one more point in my question, Samantor. I'll let you talk on that then. If I assume that it's really India is supporting the TTP, then Mumbai attack was done by the TTP people. So why I shouldn't believe that India was well aware of that and they wanted to have this type of scenario, to create such scenario, they let this thing happen. Would you agree with that?
Of course not, because now we are just shelving every standard of journalism and going down to these conspiracy theories about...
No. This is the thing, this is the perception. Unfortunately, perception is reality. I mean, no matter what kind of academic discussions you and I do here, has no meaning. Perception is the reality. And I am asking you, this is the perception, I want you to answer it. Instead of attacking me back on my weak journalistic ability. So please go ahead and comment on what I ask you.
Yeah, it could be a Misbah perception and therefore a Misbah reality, but this is definitely not a Samansar perception. It is not a Samansar reality.
Okay.
What I see is very clear. I see in the Pakistani press venom against India, against Hindus all the time. You don't have to teach me about what I see. I have seen it. So if these elements, they are brought up with all this kind of nonsense, this kind of education, and they go out and they attack, I am not surprised at all. I think that this is exactly what is happening. Is the same thing happening vice versa? I haven't seen it yet, but with this wave of right-wing wave in India, this might happen in future, but haven't seen it yet. So I don't go with this kind of perception as reality, because this is not a general perception. This might be a perception with you, maybe with Riyaza, but definitely not something which is shared by the general population of India and Pakistan.
Okay, yeah, this is not a perception. I don't know which world he's living, because everybody I talk to in Pakistan, they say this thing.
And talk to people in India, people who read the Indian media. You will see the kind of venom that's being spread against Pakistan.
That's true.
I mean, the stories are full of Pakistan, all Pakistanis being terrorists.
Look at their media.
Yeah, their foreign minister stood up at the UN General Assembly and said Pakistan produces terrorists while India produces engineers.
Yes.
What you forgot is that Pakistani Prime Minister is an engineer. An Indian Prime Minister is a known terrorist who was barred from entering the United States for a long time.
Twitter.
So I think the irony is completely lost on these people. Who say that Pakistan is created, the venom is in Pakistan. I mean, you see this person stand in front of the international community and say Pakistan only produces terrorists and India only produces engineers. I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that you have to deal with, and in fact the reality is just the opposite. They have a terrorist for a prime minister, and Pakistan has an engineer as a prime minister.
I would not go that far in calling him terrorist.
Oh, he's absolutely. I think there is no question that he was involved. That's why he was banned from entering the United States for about 10 years.
Yeah, actually that was due to his involvement in the Gujarat incident. Samador, if you want to make a quick comment, then otherwise I will go further.
Yeah, I mean, I would also, I'm not a big fan of Modi at all. So, but at the same time, I will not call him a terrorist. It's almost like, saying that something was proved against him. Yes, he was the chief minister of Gujarat when this massacre happened. But, I mean, how can we prove that he was involved in this massacre? There is no such proof.
There is no proof against Pakistan that they've been involved in any of these things.
And nobody is saying that is exactly, what I am saying.
I mean, we keep talking about proof when it comes to India, but you don't need any proof to call Pakistan terrorists. I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with this thing that, in this Sushma Swaraj's speech when she said that Pakistan only produces terrorists, that was a very, I don't think...
This is kind of Hindutva, hateful, rhetoric that you hear all the time in the Indian media and the Indian government now.
But you must understand who started this, how this two-nation theory basically...
Well, two-nation theory has nothing to do with it. Two-nation theory was about creating, separate states. It was not about hating each other.
Let's move on. We can talk about this also. We should come back to our country. Trump's shenanigans, Puerto Rico. Riaz, did you see President Trump's tweets?
Yeah, he's been on
Miss Carmen's...
on a rampage this morning on Twitter.
Yeah.
Attacking the San Juan, Puerto Rico mayor for begging for help. She's begging. She's saying we're desperate.
We're desperate.
We need food. We need water.
Exactly.
We need fuel.
Yeah.
It's not here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what's going on right now. This is a serious. See, it's been more than a week, and there are people who still don't have these basic necessities there. So that is, the treatment that they're receiving is very different from the treatment that was given to the people in Texas and the people in Florida. Now, one reason that people speculate is because, they're not, white Americans like the other people in Texas and Florida. The other reason is they don't have any votes. They don't have any representation in the United States Congress. They don't vote in the presidential election. So they're not as important.
Yeah.
But what they need to understand is that there's like 3.5 million people there. They're American citizens. They can easily move to the United States. If you have an exodus of Puerto Ricans from the island, where will they come? They will come mostly to Florida. That's where they have a lot of Puerto Ricans now. Now, when they come to Florida, who will they vote for? They're mostly Democrats.
Yeah.
And with the way they're being treated by the Republican administration and Republican Congress, they're going to remember that.
That's true.
So I think they need to think about their own, best interest, and they're not doing that. Now, the bottom line that I'm seeing right now is, there is a problem, obviously, in the sense that it's an island, that all their basic infrastructure has been wiped out by this. It was a very, powerful storm, Category 5 storm that hit them. Their roads are not working, their telecommunications is down, their power grid is down, and life is very difficult. The logistics are very difficult there. But the military is made to operate in these kinds of environments. And they're finally now using the military. They could have done that a week ago. Why did they wait this long to make that decision?
Yeah. Samantor, Mr. Trump says that there are 10,000 workers already there, 5,000 soldiers there. Do you really think that he's right, what he wrote in his Twitter?
No, I cannot verify these numbers, Misbah, but what I can tell you from my own experience in Puerto Rico is that because Puerto Rico, you must understand that it has been a part of the U.S. for a little over 100 years, 110 years.
Yes, since the Spanish-American War.
Spanish-American War.
So there is an underlying Puerto Rican nationalism that exists there. Obviously, their main language is Spanish, unlike the 48 contiguous states or even Hawaii and Alaska. So there is, this feeling that they are not actually part of the U.S. and anytime somebody like Trump comes along and has these kind of tweets, it basically stokes this feeling of being different than the rest of the country, and that's why they are treated differently. So it is not good, for the U.S. to have a president talk to the people and the leadership of a part of the U.S. in this tone as, Trump has done. But, what would you expect from Trump? I mean, this is exactly what he has been doing from day one. And then let's see how long people will take it.
Tourism.
Well,
we have only 2 minutes.
There's very good news. This is from Bloomberg published this, that the foreign travel to Pakistan has tripled since 2013, and the local domestic tourism is up 30%. And they talk about the number of people traveling. There's 1.75 million foreigners and 38.3 million Pakistanis who traveled.
Yeah.
And they contributed during this period on a yearly basis. They contribute about 6.9% of the gross domestic product to Pakistan. In 2016, they contributed $19.4 billion to Pakistani economy, and they expect this figure to rise to $36 billion in the next decade. So I think this is good news, and this is basically because of improved security. That's one, improved infrastructure. So I think that's good news for Pakistan needs. This creates jobs, this creates opportunities for people.
That's true. Samantor, 1 minute.
Yeah, so definitely tourism is good because this is how you make friends. I mean, when you go, is why you have traveled the world. If you go and you stay in a city, in a country, then it's very hard for you to have just a pure animosity towards those people and towards that land. So that is why tourism is a great thing to make friends in the West, in the rest of the world, for Pakistan.
Tourism is a great thing to make friends in the West and all other part of the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was our show. That was the last word came from Ali Hassan Samantor and Riaz Haq. Thank you very much. Keep watching Viewpoint from Overseas. I am your host, Misbah Azam.